welcome to our weekly teleseminar. I'm Nancy Desjardins from healthlady.com. And if this is your first time, welcome. Today I'll be hosting a 60-minute teleclass, and we're going to talk about how to take charge of your health with the liver and gallbladder cleanse with a very special guest, Andreas Moritz. So now about Andreas Moritz. Andreas is a medical intuitive, a practitioner of Ayurveda, iridology, shiatsu, and vibrational medicine, a writer and also an artist. He was born in southwest Germany in 1954. Andreas had to deal with several severe illness from an early age, which compelled him to study diet, nutrition, and various methods of natural healing while still a child. So by the age of 20, he had completed his training in both iridology, the diagnostic science of eye interpretation, and dietetic. In 1981, Andreas began studying Ayurvedic medicine in India and finished his training as a qualified practitioner of Ayurveda in New Zealand in 1991. So rather than being satisfied with merely treating the symptoms of illness, Andreas has dedicated his life work to understanding and treating the root cause of illness. So because of this holistic approach, he has had great success with cases of terminal diseases where conventional method of healing prove futile. So since 1988, he has practiced the Japanese healing of art of shiatsu, which has given him insight into the energy system of the body. In addition, he devoted 8 years of research into consciousness and its important role in the field of mind-body medicine. He's also the author of many, many books. I'm going to mention 3 of them. It's The Amazing Liver Gallbladder Flush and The Liver Gallbladder Miracle Cleanse and Timeless Secret of Healing and Rejuvenation. Do visit his website, which is www.Ener-Chi.com. So it's Ener-Chi.com. Or just Google, just type in Andreas Moritz, and that will guide you right on his website. So welcome, Andreas, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
This is our second interview, and I was so looking forward for this interview. And so, Andreas, can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you wrote the book Delivering Gallbladder Miracle Cleanse?
Well, I'll answer the second question first because it had to do with my own illnesses, and I suffered 40 gallstone attacks, one every 7-8 weeks. And anyone who knows what a gallstone attack is and has experienced it will know that it's extremely painful. So it served me as a great motivator to find out why I had these gallstone attacks, not just that I had them, but why I had them. And so I discovered, it took me back way to my early childhood, where I had an injury on my head. It caused scoliosis. It caused me gastrointestinal problems. By the time I was 6 years old, I already had gallstones in my liver. Actually, I'm saying that consciously, gallstones in my liver, because nobody really could figure that one out. My uncle was a leading medical doctor in Germany at that time. He was an iridologist as well, and he looked in my eyes and said, "You have stones in your liver." And I always remembered that. And so when I developed these very, very powerful, painful gallstone attacks, I remembered his words, "There are stones in your liver." And so I didn't want to sacrifice my gallbladder just for nothing, really. I knew the implications of what happens when your gallbladder has been removed, such as continuous gastrointestinal problems. The risk of cancer is going up. Obesity can result from that. So there were many, many things that I didn't want to happen, and I looked for natural alternatives how to get rid of these stones in the liver. I knew I had gallstones in the gallbladder because, whenever I had a gallstone attack, one or several of these stones started coming through, but they unfortunately got stuck in my common bile duct, which caused me the excruciating pain, which oftentimes lasted as long as 3 weeks, a day and night, and you cannot really take a breath without going into spasm. So the answer to my search was given to me because I lived in an area of the world where olive oil was one of the commonest foods that exist there. In the Greek island, in this particular place, it's Cyprus, which is partly Greek and partly Turkish. And what I was looking for is an answer. What do the grandmothers and mothers, the Greek mothers and grandmothers, do when their children get sick? And so this took me into the remote villages. And when I asked them, what do you do when your grandchildren are sick? And they said, well, we give them olive oil and lemon juice to drink. I said, what? And they said, well, what happens then? Well, these green things are coming out of them, and they feel good again, and they're healthy, and they're very healthy. And so these people are actually very healthy. They live off the land. They have, but sometimes, things can happen that, children get sick, and so they put them on these liver cleanses. They had no idea what actually would happen, but when I researched the matter, I found this wasn't new. I found books from the 1920s in the English literature in Great Britain, and also some German literature where in the early 20th century people, doctors were actually talking about these cleanses that could purge the liver of toxins and stones. And so when I tested it out on myself, then I immediately found, when I looked in the toilet bowl, 300 stones sitting there. They were floating in the toilet, and I felt somehow rejuvenated. Something happened. There was greater clarity. My eyes looked better. I had more energy, and then I didn't have a gallstone attack again. Never, after my first liver flash. So that's where the story began. I noted down my experiences, and eventually I wrote the first version of the liver flush. It was called the liver cleanse, and then it became the amazing liver cleanse because it became more amazing as I continued passing these stones, and my health improved dramatically doing that. And so that's where basically the brief history of the liver and gallbladder flush comes from.
Wow, it's very powerful. I mean, you're just your own experience, and what I did is after our first interview, we're going back to 2 years ago. I had read your book and did several liver gallbladder cleanse, and whenever we live in it's almost impossible to remove stress from our life. How's your stress level, Andrea?
Well, there's always a reason that could make you feel stressed. However, that has more to do with you than with the situation that occurs. So if you haven't slept well during the night, and then something happens that could could be a grievance in your life, then you react more strongly to that than you would if you had been well rested and energized. So if
okay, well let me add.
Yeah.
But let me add something to this. So what happened after those several, liver gallbladder cleanse? I was definitely one of those people that I was having a hard time coping with perhaps the demand or stress. First thing I noticed with the liver gallbladder cleanse is I was more adaptable. I was able to cope with situation much, much better. So that's what I wanted to share. Is
right.
It powerful or what?
Absolutely, because that's basically what it does. It raises your energy levels. It allows you to differentiate. You have a greater clarity in your mental capacities. You have a better way to modify your responses to any given situation because you have a greater sense of clarity about them. And so a lot of things happen. It's not just that your eyesight, your outer vision can improve and become more clear, but your inner vision as well. And so you start seeing things more clearly, and you realize that stressful conditions that may have bothered you before, they may not be as stressful now. So something happens inside. When your body is feeling healthier, then you are also responding to stressful conditions in a much different way. You have a much more relaxed sort of approach to stress.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad that you elaborate on this subject. But now, before we dive into the interview, could you explain the functions of the liver?
Well, I could talk for days about that because the liver is probably the most complex organ that we have. It is almost, or it's on the same foot as the brain in terms of complexity. There's hardly anything that happens in the body that is not indirectly or directly controlled by the liver. One of the most important things is to produce a substance that helps us to digest food, and that is called bile. And bile is a greenish, yellowish liquid that has a bitter, sour taste to it. That when you eat food and it comes into your stomach, the gallbladder is collecting bile from the liver, and it is secreting it into the common bile duct from where it enters the small intestine. And so by the time your food is traveling into your intestines, it is being met with bile. And that is very, very significant and important because the bile is alkaline. The hydrochloric acid in the stomach is obviously acidic, and so there's a neutralization of acid that takes place to protect the lower intestines from erosion. So it's very important that we make enough bile. Now, the bile is needed to digest fats, and without the bile you cannot digest fat. You can also not absorb minerals like calcium and magnesium. You need the presence of bile to do that. So you can already see how important this particular substance is. Imagine if no calcium gets absorbed, your bones are going to become brittle, and you literally die from, you cannot stand, you cannot walk, you cannot do anything. So it's a simple thing which has incredible repercussions throughout the entire body, in this case the skeletal system. Now if you want to digest food, because food is absolutely essential to sustain the life of the 60 trillion cells that maintain your body. Imagine if the fat is not digested, then you also have problems with any other type of food. Carbohydrates need fat to digest them. Without fat you cannot digest carbohydrates. Without fat you can also not digest proteins. So if you cannot digest proteins and fats and carbohydrates, you have nothing. And so that's why people who don't make enough bile anymore, the body is going into a state of either emaciation or obesity. Which is basically the same thing. It means that the cells no longer receive their nutrients. The body might desperately hold on to fluids and fat and anything that might come into it and store it to wait for the rainy day, so to say, when the juices can flow again. And so a lot of problems arise when we don't secrete or produce enough bile in the liver and in the gallbladder. The bile is also necessary to take toxins out of the liver. This is the liver's way to remove toxins that the liver cells have removed from the bloodstream. So the liver is in charge of detoxifying the blood, and through the blood, the rest of the body. So if there is any part of the body that accumulates toxins, it shows that the liver is not capable of doing its job properly, and therefore the ability to dump toxins into the bile and carry them out of the liver into the intestines for excretion, that function has been impaired. So the liver is extremely important also with regard to storing certain fat-soluble vitamins, like vitamin D and K and A. And so when the liver is congested and it cannot absorb these fat-soluble vitamins because there's not enough bile to digest fats to derive these vitamins from and store them in the liver, then a lot of many health problems can result just from that. So you can see how the liver, which monitors how many vitamins are needed that have to be stored in the liver, how many can be released and discarded. The liver constantly keeps track of all of those functions. Then there is the ability to keep the blood values at the proper levels, and that's extremely important. Otherwise our body would constantly bleed, or it would get the blood clots that would be formed because the blood would be too thick. So the liver, through very complex processes that would take volumes of description, if you ever want to write about it, to describe it, is extremely complex, how the blood is maintained at the perfect level, and the liver is in control of that. So anything that can affect the liver functions can therefore have huge repercussions for the rest of the body.
And today, we're exposed to environmental toxicity. I mean, can you talk about that? What an impact this has to do, this has on the liver.
Absolutely. It's not just that, certain foods or beverages, like alcohol, the liver, is known to break down alcohol, but it can do that only to a certain degree, and the excess amount will then create issues that if you drink too much alcohol, it can lead to liver cirrhosis, and that's very well known, and pancreas destruction. So there are things that the liver is trying to do whenever there are pesticides coming into the system. These are chemicals produced in the laboratories. The liver has a certain capability of breaking down some of them, but not all of them. So the liver also is in charge of removing your air toxins that you breathe in that end up in your bloodstream. The liver also deals with toxins that we create when we don't digest our food properly. So when we overeat, for example, when we eat too much in the evening, when we eat foods that are very hard to digest, like animal protein, where the human body has the capacity to digest between 10, 15, and in some young people perhaps can digest 20% of a steak. The rest of it will have to be decomposed, and that produces nitrosamines, which are very powerful toxins. And when they enter the liver tries to detoxify as much of them as possible, but oftentimes that doesn't work. There is simply too much coming in. We are exposed to fluoride in drinking water and toothpastes and mouthwashes. There are toxins that come, particularly women, when they use makeups and your other your body creams and things that we put on our hair dye. So there are so many different sources of pollutants. Just drink from a bottle of a plastic bottle, any water or other beverages. There will be plastic components which are carcinogenic, that means cancer producing, that are leached into the water or into the beverage, like Coca-Cola. Has already a lot of acid, so it leaches out chemicals from the plastic bottle that end up in the system. There are hormones, there are drug elements in the drinking water now that people, when they use these drugs, they pass them into the drink. Even antibiotics are now found in drinking water. So you dose yourself with drugs, for things you don't need to take them for, simply by drinking water, public water. So there are many contaminants. There are other things. When you look in the sky, you have chemtrails that they're dumping, they're spraying chemicals onto the people, these white long things that are consisting of aluminum oxides, which are extremely poisonous. So when you breathe that in, or it gets into the food when it settles, or into the drinking water, then we become contaminated. Live in a place in a big city. Just today there is new research that showed that it causes brain damage and mental problems and memory issues in people that live in urban areas, simply because of the pollutants. So there's many things that the liver has to deal with, and in this world, in today's environment, it's virtually impossible for the liver to get rid of all those multiple and differentiated kinds of chemicals and poisons and toxins. That when people get vaccines, they get a whole cocktail of 63 carcinogenic poisons that enter the system. So the liver is not coping with that. It's impossible for the liver to deal with all the toxins, and therefore the liver has to dump some of them into the bile ducts to surround them with bile, to encapsulate these toxins, to keep them from entering the small intestine, where they could be absorbed and enter the blood and cause blood poisoning. So for the liver to create stones, that's really a necessity, not a disease. This is not something. This is a survival mechanism. So the body does that only to protect ourselves, at least for the time being, from being overloaded with toxins, where the toxins might enter the brain and cause severe brain damage.
And would you say that the color of your stool could indicate the quality of your bile?
Oh, absolutely, and this is well known. You can read that up in any physiology book, that when the stools start floating, it shows that the fat that you've eaten is not digested properly. It stays in the fecal matter, and it will cause the fecal matter to be lighter than water, so it will float. It's like a boat. So like a boat that it has air in it, like these little airboats. So the same thing applies to stool that is colored grayish, sort of pale color, not the typical brown color. The brown color comes from the hemoglobin in the bile, and that colors it in that form, and the bile also colors it in this way. Once it's used in the digestive process as designed, then it will give you nice brown, well-shaped, non-smeary stools. Whereas if they are light-colored, gray-colored, or sort of pale-looking, then it shows there is not enough bile that comes through into the digestive tract to help digest the food with.
And now, so how many liver cleanse would a person need to go, and how would someone know when the liver is clean?
Yes, that depends really on each individual. And when I first wrote the book, I thought what happened to me that I needed 10 to 12 liver flushes to be completely clean. I passed about 3,500 stones, and then that's when all the pain that I used to have completely disappeared in my body. My digestion rebalanced, and many different improvements that are, again, I've talked about that in the book, that can happen, but it's different for each person. There were some people that only needed 6 cleanses to be completely clean, and I found other people that needed 25 or more cleanses. So it depends on how profoundly the liver has been impacted right from childhood with contaminants that it could not detoxify, break down, eliminate, that the body needed to produce stones in order to keep the body safe. And so the person should attempt to, once you have done a number and there are no more stones coming out, to do another 2 liver flushes to make sure that, in fact, the liver is completely clean.
And what about if someone had their gallbladder removed? Can they still do a liver gallbladder cleanse?
They are the most likely candidates that should do liver flushes, because first of all, the gallbladder was removed because the gallbladder had stones in them. However, you cannot have stones in a gallbladder without having many times the number of stones in the bile ducts of the liver. And I've had many people who had their gallbladders removed, and they still complain about having gallstone attacks. And the doctors, they think they are mentally not quite right in the head. There's no way that you can have gallstones when you don't have a gallbladder. But when they finally come to read my book, and or they communicated with me, and I said, well, the issue is that you do have stones, but they are not in your gallbladder because it's not there, it's in your liver. And so then they do liver flushes, and they're totally surprised that all those stones come out, and that they then discontinue having any difficulties with gallstone attacks. The problem with removing the gallbladder, and in 99% of the cases this is done unnecessarily, just as it would have been unnecessary in my case, even though my gallbladder was completely packed full with gallstones. It was almost like bursting full, and still I was able to release them. That when you remove the gallbladder, then the side effect is that you still cannot digest fats properly, because the gallbladder is missing, and the gallbladder is the only organ that is capable of secreting or pushing enough quality, highly concentrated bile that is about 10 times, 1/10 of the liquidity of the regular bile in the liver. That means it's 10 times more concentrated than the bile in the liver. And in that concentrated form, that's when the digestion is really going well. So when the gallbladder is removed, that entire function is missing, and there's only some little drips or drops of bile coming out directly from the liver, entering the small intestine, which is not controlled. It's not time-phased with the digestion, and therefore it just trickles in throughout the day, little drops, just as the liver produces bile, it starts entering the small intestine, which is not a good idea. The bile should only be coming into the intestine when it is needed, when there's food that is going through it, not when there's nothing going through it. So the problem with removing gallbladder is immense. In this case, the person may use an ox bile to supplement in order to facilitate the digestion of fat, which then helps the digestion of carbohydrates and proteins as well. That's every doctor should recommend that, but hardly any of them. They just rip out the gallbladders and then send the patient home and say, "You're fine now. You can start eating whatever you want." But then I get feedback from these individuals that then say they cannot digest food. They still have the aches and pains in the liver area, and they still get gallstone attacks. So the medical theory is completely obsolete, misleading, and it's not correct.
So gallbladder removal is definitely not the solution to the problem. So you mentioned ox bile if you had your gallbladder removed.
Right.
That's to be taking on a daily basis, or?
Yes, it causes diarrhea like regular bile does. If you made too much bile, you would get diarrhea, and that's another sort of disorder that is associated with a particular body type called the Pitta body type, that they often produce too much bile. But that's a completely different story. However, yes, removing the gallbladder requires that the person has some sort of bile supplement that allows that person taken with each meal to help digest the fats. If you take too much of it, the ox bile, then you would get diarrhea, so you would have to reduce it to a point where it allows you to have properly formed stools and not diarrhea.
You mentioned earlier that you had 40 gallstone attack, and your first liver gallbladder cleanse, you didn't have any gallstone attacks. So that would be the solution for anyone who does have gallstone attack to do a cleanse or several cleanses.
Yeah, absolutely. And many people are afraid. They are terrified. Oh my God, I have these stones, and the doctor said, well, you have 1 centimeter stone in your gallbladder. You have maybe 10 of them, or the gallbladder is filled up with stones. There is a great misconception. For example, when you eat let's say that person eats a very fatty meal, like fried food, a lot of fatty desserts, and then 2 hours later or an hour later, she has this extremely excruciating pain emanating from the middle part of the back, where the liver is on the right, a little bit more on the right hand side, and then the pain is shooting all the way up to the head, into basically every part of the body, and you cannot breathe properly. Every time you take a breath, it's like bringing on another spasm, a very powerful, painful spasm. And because what happens is that the gallbladder is stimulated by the fatty meal, and then a stone that is sitting sort of in the exiting part enters the cystic duct, which is that part that connects the gallbladder to the common bile duct, and it's starting to move into the common bile duct or into the cystic duct, and it gets stuck. And since these are calcified stones, or even the regular soft cholesterol stones from the liver, they could get stuck in the common bile duct simply because that obstruction irritates the bile duct, and it contracts. It goes into a very strong spasmodic contraction, which then holds the stone exactly there, and it cannot move. and then there's an inflammation, and then all the nerves that are located there, they start signaling, there's something wrong, we need to work on this. So the body needs to work on this. And so the problem is that when you have a gallstone attack, it can last a long, long time, and it can cause jaundice. Suddenly you can turn yellow because there is no more bile. The bile can no longer flow anywhere, and it's backing up. It gets into the bloodstream, and then it shows up in the white of the eye or in the skin. And so many people then panic, and then they go to the emergency room, and the doctor says, we have to immediately remove your gallbladder. And then while doing that, then they pull out that stone as well, and then they sew this thing together, and then they say, well, your everything is okay now. Whereas when you do a liver flush, a liver and gallbladder flush, it's a very different story. You are opening the bile ducts in the liver to release your stones, particularly those in the exiting bile ducts. There are two major, huge bile ducts that have like a tree behind them. They're like trunks of a tree, and then all the branches and the smaller branches and the tiny branches, and so this is the entire network. It's called the biliary tree, and we have two such trees in the liver. So when you do a liver flush, you start relaxing through the use of magnesium oxide, which is called Epsom salts. You are relaxing the bile ducts, so they can open up, they completely relax. You stimulate the gallbladder and the liver to secrete a lot of bile, because you're taking half a cup of olive oil and lemon juice or other citrus juice, which opens the gallbladder, and it releases a lot of oily bile, and the bile is very oily. But when you eat a fatty meal, you're not producing enough bile to actually continue to push stones all the way through into the small intestine. While when you do a liver flush, you are taking a lot of drinking that olive oil mixture, and you have prepared all the bile ducts, including the common bile duct, to be completely relaxed. So now you have this oily bile taking the stones that cannot get stuck in the common bile duct. The bile duct is far too relaxed. It doesn't do anything. It just allows all the stones to tumble through and get into the small intestine, and then they travel into the large intestine. You wouldn't even notice. Some people sort of have a gurgling sensation, like one stone after another, like pebbles moving through, but there's no pain, there's no discomfort in any sense. So it is very, very important to know the difference between the two. That's why you don't get gallstone attacks when you do liver flushes, but you get gallstone attacks when you eat fatty meals. You may just eat some omelette, for example. Eggs are a leading cause of gallstone attacks. So when a person eats a meal that like breakfast with eggs, and he has or she has gallstones that are ready to sort of move out of the gallbladder, then they may just have an attack shortly thereafter. And with the liver flushes, you take sort of the biggest bulk out of the liver, sort of that are sitting on the edge of the gallbladder and the liver, and so you remove these stones, and that's why it's unlikely for a person to have another gallstone attack. And if it is, it can be easily remedied. Let's say if the person eats a fatty meal and does have a mild attack, then drinking a glass of Epsom salts will allow the stone to simply go through. You don't have to go to an emergency room for that. You just drink a glass of Epsom salts, or with each meal for the next 2 or 3 meals, drink a cup of red beet juice, and that as well helps to clear out these stones without surgery. It's actually quite easy.
Oh yeah, it is. It's so simple, but that might be the reason why people are not. Well, I would say people. I mean, there's a lot of people now that are really following the this protocol. So
there are millions of them now, millions around the world.
Yes, 25 years ago, I can understand, but now today is like, absolutely. I refuse to think that still a lot of people are do not believe in liver and gallbladder cleanse. So, but now, why liver flush combined with a colon cleanse like a colonic or enema or absolutely necessary for healing?
That's a very good question, and that's important to understand because the colon and the liver, gallbladder are part of the same system. It's called the digestive system, right? And so they work hand in hand. It's a closed system. They know what the other one is doing. So if there is congestion in the large intestine, for example, a person is constipated, goes to the toilet maybe only once every 2 or 3 days, and that person would attempt a liver flush. Now we know that bile is the body's natural laxative, and it initiates a bowel movement. And so if there's not enough bile coming out of the liver, then there's just not enough peristalsis power to propel the waste out of the large intestine, and the person has constipation. So when that constipated person attempts the liver flush without cleaning out the colon before, then it's almost like a hose that you close at the end where you hold it, and you turn on the faucet, and no water can come out, and it's stuck, and nothing moves, and so no new water can come into the hose either. Like that, if the large intestine is clogged up and is constipated, then there is back pressure, air pressure, and also toxins and waste that is not moving out, and new food that is eaten cannot move down and be digested when there's constipation. So it's all piling up. It's like a big traffic jam. And what happens is that when the body is not capable of removing the waste from the colon, the gallbladder receives a signal, please don't waste any more bile on anything. So it's a vicious cycle basically. So the gallbladder is receiving a signal to stay shut and not to release bile. Without bile, new food cannot be digested, and that food that is not mixed with bile cannot be eliminated because bile is the natural laxative, and so the peristalsis doesn't take place. So when you do a liver flush and you prepare for the liver flush, it's very important to make sure that the colon is completely clean and open, and that's why it's good to do a colon cleanse before each liver flush, so that you have the best possible liver flush. That means that the gallbladder is opening up without any reservation, without any holding back, without any attempt to close itself and to shut its door, so that it can completely open up and release all the bile that it has in it, along with any stones that are in it, and it allows the liver to do the same thing, to release as much bile as possible along and carrying the stones through the system, so that there is no problem with you're having an effective, easy-going liver flush.
And what do you think about coffee enema? Good or bad?
Well, it can be done. Coffee enemas have never been shown to release stones. So the biggest impediments in the liver, they are not coming out. Coffee enema is a stimulant to release toxins from the liver, and it does that. There is no doubt about it. So coffee enemas are not colon cleanses, by the way. The coffee is a small amount of liquid that goes not further than the rectum. So it stays basically in the lower parts of the intestines. So it cannot clean out the intestines, but it can stimulate the liver to open up and release fluid or liquefied toxins. So it does have a bile stimulating effect, certainly.
So would you recommend, so colonic would be your first choice?
It would be the first choice. Definitely the first choice, because the water that goes into the colon, the entire colon, it fills the entire colon up with the water, and water is still one of the best solvents. It dissolves waste matter. It allows the intestines to expand, so any pockets, any tightness in the colon, any friction, any strictures that may be there, that can prevent the body from eliminating all the waste properly. All of that can open up, and once these pockets are open and the fecal matter is released, then that's definitely the best preparation for the liver flush. I also recommend colimas. Colima boards, which are very common or popular now, at least in North America, and is now getting more common also in Europe, where you can do this colonic basically at home, simply by lying on a board, have a high enema where a lot of water flows into the colon, into the entire colon, the entire length of the colon, and basically do something similar as colonic irrigation. If that is not available, then two to three back-to-back water enemas would be adequate as well, even though it's much less effective. So it would be like doing 2 or 3 enemas, filling up the colon, cleaning it out, whatever comes out, and then doing another enema and getting a little further into the colon with that new water, and then cleaning that out, and then doing another one, so that you make sure that the water goes all the way up to the ascending colon.
And the Colena board is available on your website. So anyone listening, again, it's Ener-Chi.com, and you go under Wellness Products, and the board is right there. And so what would you say to anyone who does any emotional release or any work on themselves and don't do any body cleanse, including liver and gallbladder cleanse? Would they still get rid of, anger or negativity toxins?
It's tough to work on something that when the body is unhappy because it's congested, it will send you signals of discomfort. And when the body is uncomfortable, then you become anxious, nervous, irritable, and you become even depressed. So when the liver is an emotional center in the body. So it is not just processing toxins, but also emotions like anger and frustration and you being upset, because and that's very understandable. We now know that when a person is called angry and he's constantly having angry eruptions, we also call him like he has a bileless nature. Right? People say he has a bileless nature. The bile is basically not coming out; it's trapped, and it's backwashing into the blood. And once bile is moving into the blood, then it causes irritability. It makes you even more nervous and anxious and you're upset. So yes, a lot of people who have done liver flushes, cleaned out their liver, they find that they cannot be angry anymore. It's almost like that part is starting to dissipate and be missing. That's what I noticed first too. When my liver was clean, I just couldn't think of things that could really make me angry. And that's a wonderful thing, because many people who have been depressed, and depression is basically prolonged anger. After a while, when the frustration and anger last too long, then we move into a state of depression. So when people do liver flushes, they sometimes feel like for a moment or two they become extremely angry, and then they don't become angry anymore after that. It's almost like a release that happens when you pass the stones and the toxins. You also release emotional toxins. And
would lack of sleep also have an effect on the liver too?
Totally.
What sleep an average of? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because sleep is, there's really nothing you can do in terms of digesting food, eliminating waste successfully, having a proper brain function. All of those, and the liver particularly, depends on your rest so that it can do its work. The most important time for the liver to do its work is between 10 and 2 in the night. And when you don't sleep at that time, then the liver is not getting enough energy. It is not getting enough blood in order to do its work. The liver is like a sponge. In the nighttime particularly, it fills up completely with blood. And where is the blood coming from? Well, it comes from the brain and the muscles and the different parts of the body that you're not using when you sleep. So when you're lying there, the liver is pulling in all that blood from the back of the brain, which is which is in itself, it's already a quart of blood, and from the muscles and all those other areas that where you're resting, you don't need as much blood. So now the liver is pulling all that blood. The liver cells are directly surrounded by blood. And it's not like other organs where there are blood vessels that somehow supply nutrients to the cells through osmosis. In the liver cell, with the liver it's completely different. The liver is swimming, the liver cells are floating in the blood. And therefore they are capable of working with the blood. They can filter things out. It's like a huge filter, and can put new things in. The liver produces thousands of different enzymes that are needed on a cellular level for cell metabolism, for digestion, and for detoxification, for removing oxygen-free radicals. There's so much that depends on the sleep. So when you are not sleeping at this time, let's say you go to bed at midnight, past midnight, then the liver doesn't get all that blood in order to filter, remove toxins, put new things in, replenish everything. So then the next day you have a deficiency in certain nutrients, certain enzymes, certain minerals, vitamins. The iron may be not, your iron level in the blood may not be correct. Therefore, the oxygenation of the blood will be inadequate. You're not transferring enough oxygen to the cells. You start feeling tired. You start looking for something to stimulate you, like more cups of coffee, more stimulating foods and beverages. So all of that comes when there is lack of sleep. And another effect is that there is a very powerful hormone that's produced at around 9:30, 10 o'clock, provided you're shutting your eyes and there's darkness around you and you're sleeping, and that is called melatonin. And melatonin regulates all the endocrine hormones in the body. So it's through the thyroid, and the thyroid is responsible for all the endocrine glands. So it's an important factor to make sure we get the proper sleep. We found there's a lot of research now with regard to sleep, cancer, and many ailments, diabetes, obesity, that when the liver particularly is not allowed to do its work sufficiently during the nighttime, then the entire body can go into a mode of chaos. And you, as an emotional being, can have emotions such as irritability, cannot concentrate as well. We now know our learning ability is less, the ability to remember things is less, and the immune system is suppressed. So there are many things that depend on proper sleep. Absolutely, I would say that's probably one of the most important things to do if you want to improve your health. Sleep early and have at least 8 hours of sleep. The people before electricity was invented used to sleep 9 to 10 hours. Typically, an American on average sleeps less than 6 hours.
It's really not enough. And in your book, you recommend 2 more questions, Andreas. I know I so enjoyed this interview. In your book, you recommend taking MMS, which is Miracle Mineral Supplement. Can you explain what MMS does?
Yes, so it's basically a chemical that the body does produce, but if it's not produced sufficiently, then we may take that in and use it to detoxify certain chemicals and substances, including heavy metals. So if mercury has accumulated, then MMS has the capability of breaking it down into completely harmless substances. So it's basically for detoxification, removing chemicals in the tissues, and it's a good support system, particularly if there is a severe contamination that has happened. It can also kill parasites, and it can also clear up candida overgrowth. I'm not sort of going out and shouting everyone should take MMS. I would leave it for particularly severe cases of contamination, and in most cases cleaning out the liver, the kidneys, and the colon, and having a regular lifestyle, good sleeping habits, drinking enough water, being well hydrated. That takes care of most of the issues. But in severe cases, if I had malaria, again, I had it once when I was in India and I died. I was literally dead for 8 minutes. And when I came back, my malaria disappeared within an hour. But I wouldn't, if a person has malaria, I would say don't tempt that, because you might not come back. But I would take MMS and clear the parasite from the system quite quickly.
Before we end this call, can you talk about your Ener-Chi painting, which is utilized for healing?
Yes, it's not designed to deal with any physical disorders. However, it deals with the energy system, and energy in the sense of Chi, life force. Qigong, yoga, all those systems, they deal with, and shiatsu, acupuncture, acupressure, they all work with the meridian system in the body. And there is a meridian basically connected to every organ and system. So likewise, many illnesses come from when there's a blockage of Ener-Chi, the Chi, the real life force. That, by the way, the liver is the central distribution organ for Chi. So that's why it's so important also to keep that organ neat and clean, so that it can distribute Chi or life force to the cells in the body. And the Chi can be subdued because Chi flow can stop when there is, let's say, congestion in an organ, like in the gallbladder or liver, or the spleen, or the brain and nervous system, or the small intestine, large intestine, or the skeletal system, the muscular system, the lymphatic system. So there can be lack of flow of Chi through the ducts and channels of elimination and circulation in the body. And any physical congestion will lead to a congestion in the Chi flow, and vice versa. Any congestion in the meridians, in these energy ducts, that can now be measured actually by medical diagnostic tools. When there's a blockage of Chi, then that corresponding organ can then start to malfunction. So, for example, You think of people who had like a leg removed, an amputation. They still complain, or 96% of them will still complain having pain in the same place where the leg once was before. And the reason for that is because the Ener-Chi ducts are still there. So what I've found over the years that pain is actually not caused by anything physical, but by these non-physical channels. When they are blocked, you get pain. The pain, the nerve pain comes afterwards. So when I designed, created pictures, one picture for every organ and system in the body, simply by looking at one of these Ener-Chi art pictures, you restore the chi flow through any, like the stomach meridian, the large intestine, the spleen meridian, the liver or gallbladder meridian, the thyroid meridian, the thyroid, the endocrine system. So when you open the chi, then it allows basically the energy to flow freely again, and it works. Some of the pictures, just looking at it for 45 seconds, it does that, and it lasts for at least several weeks. Just looking at it for 45. So it's very innocent, very easygoing, but it really works. I've tested it on every single person. It works 100%. It always does. So it's sort of a gift that came to me. I was never painting in my life before, and then I created these paintings. There are 33 paintings now. And you can find them on my website, Ener-Chi.com. That's why it's called Ener-Chi, Ener-Chi.com.
Everything is available on your website, and
yes.
It's very informative, and you also have the list of all the books you wrote, and so the amazing liver and gallbladder flush, and so you have both books?
Yes, that is basically my favorite edition, The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush. The Miracle Cleanse is published by another publisher that I gave the book to, so it has a different title. I'm working on right now on a new edition, but it will take me before the end of the year, probably December it will come out.
But all your books are available on Ener-Chi.com.
Yes, and also on Amazon. So if you put my name in, Andreas Moritz, you'll find 13 books there, and different languages.
Yes, absolutely. And I also have The Timeless Secret of Health and Rejuvenation. So
yes.
That's another, that could be another interview with just this book alone. So, Andreas, thank you so much. I mean, what a real honor to have an opportunity again to interview you today and have you share your insight with our listener. And I really sure hope that everyone took some notes because that was a lot of information. So, Andreas, again, thank you so much.
You're most welcome. It was my pleasure.
And again, to visit Ener-Chi.com, Andreas Moritz. Andreas, all the best to you, and I can't wait to read the new edition. You said at the end of this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So thank you, everyone, for listening to this interview. And again, thank you, Andreas.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.